it goes a little something like.
Mr. Daniel Edmund.
King Ade, how are you, brother?
I'm good, how you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm doing good.
Good.
Doing good.
So, you're a professional speaker, presenter, social entrepreneur, and you're passionate about leadership.
Yes.
In a nutshell, can you tell me about how you've grown into that?
I've grown into leadership. It's a good question. I think for me, it's been an interesting trajectory in terms of my life, in terms of my personal life, and I think that's also linked to my professional career as well. But I think for me, leadership is something that I've always felt like I've been called to in some particular way. And I think it's important to say that in my opinion, there's different types of leadership. There's a heart for leadership, which I think all of us have to some degree, and there are positions of leadership, which I don't think everyone, wants to be in or feels called to be in. So, for instance, a heart for leadership, I think everyone is a leader. At some point, well, first we have to lead ourselves. We have to. It's about having that discipline to get up in the morning, to eat well, work out, do all the different things that we want to do. Progress in our personal and professional careers. We have to lead. So there's leadership in all of us. If we decide to have a partner and start a family one day, we'll be leading our family in some way.
We'll be head of the household if you're a man.
Yeah. We'll be leading, or taking turns leading as well. With your partner, you'll be leading your children. You'll be leading maybe your community. And so there's a real heart for leadership that I personally believe that we all have. But then there are also positions of leadership, which may be the head of a company, or starting your own company, or political office, or community leader. Some type of actual position. And that's not a space where everyone feels called to. It's not a space everyone wants. So for me, there are those kind of these two different spheres of leadership. Whereas for me particularly, I do feel called to both of those. So for me, my dad is a pastor, so he leads his own church, and I'm fourth generation speaker. I've come from 3 generations before me of pastors and bishops within the Christian faith, and so it's something that really is for me in me, and I've really witnessed, from my father and my grandfather, their ability to lead people, to inspire people, their love for people. And so for me, I grew up watching them, and it's kind of like one of those things you're training for it and you don't even realize, So now I'm 30 years old, and having had started a company, and I think particularly for this time in life right now with Black Lives Matter movement and the feminist movement and so many other different social issues that are coming to the forefront, I think it's a really poignant time to step into leadership positions, particularly. And for me, I've decided, particularly with this year's Black Lives Matter movement, to fully step into a leadership position within the conversations of race and gender right now. Yeah. So,
you gave a speech at the Black Lives Matter rally a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. How did you feel when you were in the midst of all these people? What pool of energy were you drawing from in order to give the speech that you gave? And what did you hope to impart with the speech that you gave?
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, growing up in the Christian faith and in church, I think I no matter what, I think I take that everywhere. For me, what I do is my ministry. It's not it's not within the 4 walls of the church like my father, my grandfather, my great grandfather, but it's ministry nonetheless. And I think no matter where I am, whether it's speaking, for Black Lives Matter on College Green here in Bristol, or at Kensington Palace, or in a corporate setting, that spirit is always in me. And that's what helps me to speak with passion. It's what helps me to speak with real authority. And again, it's just, I just thank God for, what He's given to me. And so for me, I definitely thank God for that, because it is a God thing for me. And it looks a lot of different ways, but it's definitely God. And so for me, in terms of the Bristol Black Lives Matter protest, my main thing was basically just to stand up for our community, for Black people all around the world. Being both British and American, I understand the challenges that we face within these two spaces. you know, and for me it was about just standing up for our community, but also really importantly, like bring people together. Unity is, for me, it has to be at the heart of it. So it's not just about sharing what's going on with our community, but also bringing other people along the ride, you know, for the journey. So, you know, that was really important. So when I was up there in College Green, it was authority, it was unity, and it was love, but it was also conviction and truth. I think that's really important. You know, I wanted to speak truth to the matter. Right. You know, and so, you know, you have a protest where there's predominantly white people there, you know, who are there to support Black Lives Matter and the movement. But it's really important that they recognize how they contribute to the injustices and inequalities of our community. That's really important. And it's not in an accusational way, but in a very realistic way. And so for me, there had to be truth. It had all be based in truth and reality.
You mentioned that the point of it all was to encourage unity and also to encourage the using truth as a vehicle for us all to heal as a community. Yeah. Like my personal background is not unique, but it is a bit different than. Well, I like to say that it's a bit different than what you would usually come across. So, and we are built by experiences. I don't believe that we are shaped by our environment. I believe that everyone has agency in how they evolve, how they progress. But I do believe that we are shaped by our experiences. My experience is coming from, for a major part of my life, from a single parent household. Yeah. And then, you know, having seen aspects of racism, aspects of social inequality, that sort of hardened me over the years. And it now became more about like, what can I do? Like, how does the way my life has shaped me? How do I use that as a vehicle to encourage others? Now, to do it that way, I now have a way of thinking where it's not very unified. Yeah. Okay. And this leads to the conversation that, you know, Black people, we are very diverse. We are not monolithic, right? Correct. My personal thought in that is that I believe that that's a major part of why we as a community are kind of held back, as unsettling as that sounds. I know it sounds unsettling, right? So I believe that we should be more monolithic. I believe that we should have less diversity of self and less diversity of thought. Because when I compare us to like other communities which have gone through, I know I'm not making direct comparisons because nothing can ever top the horrific nature of slavery and segregation and Jim Crow laws and all that. Sure. But they all thought one way. From what I read in the history books, from what I read on media, they all thought one way, and they all just followed one particular direction. So being that, like, where I think a certain way, and then another person thinks a certain way, another group of people think a certain way, how do you think unity can really be established within our communities?
It's a good question, you know, and you know, I think for one, it's about aligning people's values, you know, and I think that's the first thing. You know, I think that's whether that is with my friendship circle or a relationship or business partnerships or whatever I do, it's about aligning with values. Like, what do I value? What do I care about? And does this other person or entity share that same belief? And I think that's the first thing, you know. So, for instance, something I could be after is about progressing the Black community. All right, does this other person want to progress the Black community? All right, well, we've got one similarity there. Now, how we go about doing that may look very different. So from there, it's about saying, look, what's the end goal? What are we trying to achieve? You know, because, you know, and have very clear goals as to what we're trying to achieve. You know, I agree. I think that, you know, unity, I think within the space of unity, there is room for diversity of thought to a degree, but if everyone's trying to get to the same goal, I think that helps. But again, I do actually agree with you to a degree, because it's like you do need that kind of like everyone on the same mission. And so it's one of those things where it's like, you know, we can't have, you know, the BBC is in this situation now with you know, using the N-word on, you know, in their reporting, and this just happened a few weeks ago. And so you've got one person who stood up and says, I'm leaving the company. And as a black person, I think it's unacceptable for the BBC to use the N-word while reporting on anything. And I think he was right in doing so. But what he's done, he's by himself. Like, so it's really every black person that works at the BBC really should be saying, we're leaving, we're going. That's so much more impactful, you know, and that would make so much more of a statement. Now, of course, not everyone can do that for financial reasons or a variety of other reasons, but again, when you talk about being a monolith and being more unified, that's really what should be happening, or at least more than one person should be doing it, even if it's not every black person. You know, more than one person should be doing that. And so again, it's making sure that we're on the same page. And again, also too, you know, but what's right for one person may not be right for another. You know, someone else, you know, I was just speaking to a friend of mine who works in politics, and you know, he's someone who works from within pre-existing structures. You know, I'm definitely someone who is like, all right, let's make our own thing. You know, it's like we have different ways of going about doing things. Both people and groups of people are you know, inducing positive change, but in just different ways. So there are a lot of different ways to go about doing this. You know, progressing the black community and social issues as a whole. You know, there's a lot of different strategies that people use. But I do agree with you that we, as a black community particularly, we've got to be more unified, and we've got to move more. We've got to move better together. But to speak to that as well, man, like I think just by you living your life, you're inspiring and making change, man. I mean, to have you know, as a black man, have a PhD and you know, to work in technology as well, man. Like, I mean, you're someone who really inspires me, and I'm, you know, like that.
Appreciate that.
Just by you, of course, man. I mean, it. Like, you know, just by you living your life, man, you really inspire me, and I'm like, yeah, we are out here as a community. We are out here. We are doing it. And so, I think just by us living our lives and living in excellence, we can support our community.
Yeah, that's really part of my current mandate. This whole idea of education being the great equalizer, because I came from really humble beginnings. Yeah. So I know that when I was born, my mom, she was holding down 2 jobs, one in Burger King, one in McDonald's, and then she was working in a voluntary position in an old people's home in Golders Green. Yeah. Now, back then we used to live in like Kensington, like South East. So imagine having to travel all the way to Golders Green on the Northern Line. Like it was a lot, but you know, those humble beginnings, the inspiration of my mum. So I'll come to the next thing. You said that women in general, black women, have been very inspirational to you. Yes. My greatest inspiration is my mum. Right, she's taught me a lot of the stuff I know, and she's given me the ability to be tenacious, which I believe is a human quality that many human beings don't appear to show these days. But being tenacious, being relentless, I'm very particular about words and the nuances of how to use them. When you say to someone that you're relentless, they automatically think that there's a negative connotation attached to it, because it sounds like, you know, you're watching a thriller and, you know, the killer's relentless, like he's coming after you. No, relentless means you're not going to stop until the objective has been passed, until you reach the objective. My mom taught me how to be relentless, right? So what are your figures, female figures, that you really hold a candle to in terms of inspiring you to where you are right now? Yeah, well, my first female inspiration, similar to you, is my mother. You know, so for me, I watched as my mother, you know, really held it down. My dad, like I said, my dad's a pastor, and he travels a lot for work, and he always has my entire life. And so there would be times when my dad was gone for like weeks at a time, or maybe a month or so at a time. And so my mom, even though my parents have been together my entire life, there were times where my mom was raising us like a single parent, because her husband was out in like Jamaica or like some other part of the world, or Liberia, or wherever he was preaching at the time. You know, he would just be around the world preaching, and so there were times, long stretches of time, where my dad just wasn't there. And of course, he was doing his thing, and he was doing what God called, you know, he feels God called him to do, and he was providing for us, and so we're really thankful for that. But I saw my mother, and my mom was working full time. There's 3 kids at home that she's raising at that time by herself, because, you know, my dad wasn't there. He was traveling and working, and she's, you know, again, my brother and I, we've been competitive athletes since the time I can remember, you know, so it's picking us up from soccer practice or football practice, you know, make sure we get to school, make sure the lunches are done, you know, then, you know, make sure our homework's done, and, you know, and then taking us to our friend's birthday party and doing. I just saw my mom just juggle all these different things, and she didn't complain. And that's one of the things I look at women. I'm just so
I'm just so impressed, firstly, but like I just feel so inspired by them. Just the fact that they can do so many different things, and they really are the bedrock of any community, but particularly the Black community. It saddens me that Black women, particularly, end up at the bottom of pretty much every totem pole, whether it's professionally, personally, socially. You know, there's such a lack of praise and honor and respect for Black women around the world. You know, and so it saddens me because, again, like you, like my mother's, you know, one of my biggest inspirations. I think also too, the way my mother was able to carry herself with poise and grace. I think there's just this real way that she did all these different things, but she had this just real air of just like, you know, just grace to her that I really have been inspired by, and I think I've taken on in a lot of different ways of doing things, but doing things in a way that was very true for her. You know, my mom is a very like suburban soccer mom. Like she's from Washington D.C.
She had the 4x4 as well.
The only I tell people the only thing she didn't have was the minivan. Like apart from that, she's just like she's very she's the head of the homeowner association of our neighborhood, and she's just that person. She was at the PTA meeting. She was picking us up for practice. You know, making sure we all played instruments. And that was another thing that my parents both, but my mom particularly, when we were growing up, we all had to play one sport, we all had to play an instrument, and we all had to have a hobby. And that was up until we got to high school, and then we were able to like choose which one we wanted to invest in the most. But we had to do that. That was something we loved to do. But again, I think my mom, because now being 30 years old, I'm so much more diverse. You know, I can play the saxophone a little bit. I can play the viola a little bit. I've played most sports, and stuff like that. And I just thank her because she knew from very early on. She was like, look, you've got to be diverse. You've got to be able to do a variety of different things, particularly as a Black man. Don't let people pigeonhole you in terms of like, this is what they think you are. You've got to be able to, again, show up to a meeting and speak a bit of Russian or speak a bit of Mandarin. And just even though you may not know a lot of it, just being able to just be able to hold your own in these different spaces. So my mother's first and foremost, my grandmothers, my aunts, and then again, Coretta Scott King. You have the Williams sisters. You have Harriet Tubman. You have Michelle Obama. You have Whitney Houston, who is massive for me. Like apart from my mother, I'd say Whitney Houston is probably my next biggest inspiration. But yeah. Right.
So you mentioned that your mom encouraged you to be very diverse. So I've got here that the diversity of Daniel Edmund. Like he's a runner. He's a speaker, he's a presenter, he's a social entrepreneur. How is it like growing up in America?
Yeah. Which
is like a hotspot for a lot of pigeonholing and a lot of like you are the circumstances that you were born in. Yeah. What was it like growing up in America in that sort of environment, and then what was your educational background as well in America before you finally moved over here? Yeah,
well, for me, I do recognize a lot of the privileges I had. I grew up in a very high achieving, well, first of all, my family, my mom and dad my dad is incredibly hardworking. Both my parents are incredibly hardworking. And my family on both sides, my dad's side and my dad's side and my mother's side, are both big on education, are both big on really going after what you want in life. So that's just an energy there that I have from both sides of the family. Yeah. There's a big entrepreneur spirit on my dad's side particularly, because I think that's what people don't recognize about being a pastor or a bishop. Is like, if you're starting your own church, yes, it's a church, but essentially you're starting your own company, really. Like it's so that energy's there. My grandfather pastored the church here in Bristol, actually, Bethel United on Church Road here in Bristol, and my dad now pastors that church. But my dad had his own church in the States. So there's this energy of just like going after what you want and doing what you feel called to in life. But I feel really privileged, like and blessed that I grew up in where I grew up. I'm from Prince George's County, Maryland, which, again, I'm so thankful that I had that upbringing, because in America it is the wealthiest Black community in the whole entire country. So you're seeing doctors that look like you, you're seeing lawyers that look like you, you're seeing people who work for the government who look like you. Pretty much everyone looks like you, and it's a very big Black middle class there. So I mean, that's the energy and that's the space that I grew up around. You know, it's very normal for me to see professors who look like me, for me to see, you know, heart surgeons who look like me, teachers who look like me. That's just what was my normal then. And so it was when I left there, and I'm not saying it was just like that's all I was around, but like it just gave me this real sense of pride in who I was. As Black people, I knew that we were more than what TV showed us to be, because all I had to do was go outside our front door, and you're around just, you know, your government officials, you're around politicians who are Black, you name it, they're all Black, and I'm just so grateful that I grew up in that space, because it just, again, really encouraged me and really set me up to then go into these other spaces where you don't see that. You know, again, coming to England was just, I think moving back to England was one of the biggest challenges for me, was again not having Black people around me who were in these different spaces, you know, and that I related to on a lot of different levels, you know. So that is the energy that kind of in the space that I grew up in. The high school I went to was very diverse. You know, I'd probably say it was about 40 to 50% Black, probably 40% Black, 40% white, and 20% Asian, other ethnic minorities. Very diverse. And again, I went to a very high achieving high school, you know, academically and athletically, you know, so everything was about excellence. It was just like, that's just, everything around me was. So from my family, then to my schooling, you know, it was a really, again, high achieving school, one of the best in the country. And then again, it's just like, then being at school, they're just like, I don't want to say grooming, because grooming is not a good word, but like, they're just like training you to be this way, you know. And so even athletically, you know, was national champion in my junior year, you know, fastest time in the country, and that's just what our coaches expected of us. It was just like, yeah, you know, 8-time Maryland State champion, 4-time All-American. This was the type of, and for me, I'm not even the most accomplished runner at my high school. Like I'm not even probably like close to being the most accomplished, and I was still able to accomplish a lot.
Yeah, you won. I read that you won. I think about 4. Don't quote me on the number. Yeah. I think about 4 regional. 800. Was it 800 meter relay or 400 meter relay? Again, 8-time Maryland State champion. So obviously each state has their own championships, basically. Yeah. So we won that 8 times while I was within the 4 years I was there. And so different events you win, or like you win as a whole as a team as well. And then 4-time I think it might even be 6 times, but I'll say 4 now. 4-time All-American, which means that you got in the top 6 in the country 4 times. Okay. And then I had my relay team. We won nationally, so we had the fastest time in the entire country my junior year when I was in 2007. So that was one of the just such a proud moment for me in my life. Like Nike, they hold these championships, and to win, man. And like I was the anchor leg as well, so I was the one who came to the line. Right. And again, just to have that, like, to say that you're the best in the entire country is just this a real sense of pride. Yeah. But also too, the work ethic that we had to put in, man. Like my coach as well, who's part of the reason why I am the way I am now. Again, I think, you know, hopefully from the story you can start seeing these threads of like from my family to my school to my coach. Everyone is just calling me higher. Like everyone is saying, look, Daniel, this is where we're holding you to, and you need to really come up to this space. You're essentially an amalgamation of everyone's the word I want to use is hope. Not necessarily hopes, but people have put into you. People have imbibed into you. Yeah. And you are the culmination of all of that.
100%. You know, and so the way I operate now, I still think like an athlete. I still like operate like an athlete, because that's the only way I really know how to operate. Like that's, you know, and I've learned how to be kinder to myself and nicer to myself, because even though I'm operating like an athlete, I am not actually training for anything, so I need to remember that sometimes. But, you know, again, all these different people in my life have been really instrumental in just, again, calling me higher and saying, look, you can do this. Forget what's going on out there, because racism does exist, and, you know, systematic racism exists, and people are going to look at you and think a lot of different things. You know, particularly, you know, I remember my parents growing up in the States, you know, every Black parent has to have that conversation with their kids at some point, you know, about how to handle police, and it's the same thing we did, you know. We were literally national champions, but still having to like operate in a certain way when it came to police and stuff like that. And so, no one's exempt from that, no matter how much you may have. Like no one's exempt from that. So, again, I'm really thankful, and all of those things, you know, have helped me be the way I am now. And I think one of the reasons why we get on so much, and you know, with TJ and Lily and, you know, us lot, you know, is just I really resonate and I really respect people who have ambition and tenacity, and those are the people I resonate with the most, because that's the energy that I like to be around. And so for me, that's what I really value most from, I think, other people as well.
Do you think it was fate the day we met? So basically, I had walked into E5. Obviously not my first service, but it's the end of service.
Yeah.
Then I just see you, your head, because you're taller than a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I just see you floating through the crowd straight towards me.
Yeah.
And then that was how. And you introduced yourself as Daniel. I introduced myself as Ade.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's a certain there are strings, there are invisible strings that attach people to each other and cause them to cross paths? And
yeah, I think I've learned enough now in my life to recognize that I think whenever you are looking for someone or something, that person or thing is looking for you too. So I think I think between you and I think there's something in us that was looking for each other in that way. Like they're looking for, I know for me particularly, I was looking for a group of black men who were like really ambitious and who were really good at what they did and who could inspire me and I could inspire them, and we could, really just help each other to grow. And I was like very intentional about that. And I had met Lighty, one of our friends, maybe 2 weeks before that. So I had met Lighty, and I had just recently reconnected with TJ, and it was kind of just happening naturally, but I was very intentional, okay, these are the type of guys I want to be around. And then you all just started popping up, but I think it's because I was looking. I was quite adamant. I was intentional. So I remember when I met Lighty, he was just turned around in church and he was just there, and he had this nice suit on and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, cool. There's something here. There's just a vibe. And I was like, cool. Then I met with Lighty. Then I met you. I was like, boom. This is kind of all kind of happened.
Another brotherhood is
and then I was like, okay, cool. Because I met with all of you all individually, and then I was just like, I think all these guys need to come together, and that's how it happened, man. And I think. I think we were all looking for each other in a way, so I thank God for that, man, because I think particularly right now, with where I'm at in my life and where we're all at in my life, I think, God prepares us for the next season before the next season happens.
Yeah.
And I can even tell with what's going on with me right now that I'm just thankful that I have you all and other people in my life, because I need it. I really need it.
We all need each other, nobody does it alone. We all need each other.